How's it going, guys? This is Rio Murata, photographer based in Tokyo. In today's video, I would like to talk about the Ilford Sprite 35 II. This is what you would call a sort of like a reusable film camera made by a company called Ilford. FYI, for a lot of people's and for your information, Ilford is not a camera company, unfortunately. They are more like a film producing company, similar to like Kodak. And along with that, they make film stocks, mostly black and white, that are famous for black and white kind of stuff. Along with that, in addition to that, they also make photography paper for both inkjet pigment dye type of paper and for like film photographers. Those, typical like, papers. So Ilford Sprite 35 II. This is a camera that Ilford did not make, actually. It's an OEM product, meaning that it stands for Original Equipment Manufacturer, meaning that they basically allowed someone abroad, mostly a company or a factory in China, to like produce this product and like ship it with their like logo on it. So typically speaking, Ilford didn't make this product. They came up with a design, a concept, and they sort of like had a third party manufacture their product. So what's interesting about this camera in particular is that it resembles exactly somewhat similar to the Kodak M3 that I talked about in my earlier videos, maybe in last year if I'm right. And everything, not the aesthetics, but more like the functionality, everything is exactly the same as a Kodak M3, the what you call the lever where you wind the film, the button in order to like open the back flap of this camera, and also the area where you stick in the battery for your flash is exactly the same as the Kodak M35. And I guess they might be manufactured in the exact same factory if I'm right. I actually purchased my Ilford Sprite 35. I actually did not buy it new because it's really expensive actually. I've bought it used for roughly $30-40 if I'm right, on a Craigslist type of site. In Japan we call it Mercari. So, and along with that, the guy who was selling this also like put in sort of like as a service actually of Fuji Industrial 100 with the purchase of this camera, and I thought it would be nice to like shoot it with that like film stock to see how it would like perform and give you guys the overall verdict of this camera. Okay, so before jumping into what I shot, I need to talk about the sort of like the specs of this camera because it looks similar to the M35 from Kodak. And when I was doing my research, I found out that this camera, the Ilford 35 and the Kodak, uses the exact same lens. Actually, it uses a 35mm, like a prime lens with only one optical, what I call plastic lens construction. But what caught my eye was the f-stop, and the Ilford was like rated at f9, and it's like sort of like a fixed camera, so you can't change the settings on this camera, at a shutter speed of 1/125, while the Kodak on the other hand was f10 if I'm right. It's the other way around. I got it other way around. So Ilford's rated at f10 and the Kodak is rated at f9. Sorry guys. So it's only just not one stop, but it's like it's an incremental difference, but that means that typically, if I'm right, theoretically the Ilford will look darker than the Kodak by a slight margin if I'm right. My sort of like Kodak M35 video, there were a couple of things I forgot to like mention after using this camera that I realized that I should have said. And one is that this is sort of like a reusable film camera, so not your typical like disposable camera where it's like one-time use only. You can basically reuse this camera numerous times, and it's said that for these types of camera you should use like a film stock that's like rated at an ISO of 200-400, and this is due to the fact like I said, the shutter speed and the f-stop is already fixed to a certain like setting, meaning that if you actually shoot with a film stock that's like below ISO 200, you will get bad results, and that's what I found out after shooting this camera with the Fuji Industrial 100. And here are some of the photos, and before like doing any kind of edits, you guys can tell that it looks really muddy, it looks really dark, and that is sort of like a con that I should have like said in the M35 video, but because back then I think I shot with a Kodak or a Color Plus 200 or Kodak Gold 400 or something like that, which is rated at a higher ISO. I never found that out, but after shooting with a lower speed ISO film, I found out that it doesn't look as clean and it looks really muddy in my opinion. So that's like one of the things I realized after shooting with this camera. So I would highly suggest like shooting with a film stock that is rated at 200 or 400 at most. And if you're lucky, or if you have the money, go with a film stock that's like ISO 800. So Portrait 800 might be expensive, but if you want to try that out, it might be great to like shoot this camera with Portrait 800 or something like that. To mention, with the ISO 100 film, it does perform really well on sunny days, just sunny days, period. Cloudy days, I actually brought this camera to Toyosu, and also when I shot my previous video when I went to Haramifuto, I brought this camera along and shot some photos. You guys can tell that on that day it was like really sunny, it was really bright, and this camera performed really well. However, on a different day, I brought this camera to Shinjuku when it was cloudy, and if you look at the photos, it looks terrible in my opinion. And this like shows that if you shoot with the ISO of 100 type of film with this camera that's already fixed in terms of the settings, like it's best to like shoot during the sunny like time of the day, early in the day, and not during the dark like season. And because some of the photos look really terrible, I in post bumped up the exposure by 2 stops to see how it would look, and it would look like this actually. And you guys can tell that that 2 exposure is basically ISO 100 to ISO 400 is 2 stops. So it's basically you're gonna get something like this if you shoot with an ISO of 400 type of film, and that's what most people are looking for. So I mean, it's the best bet to like shoot with a film stock that has a rated ISO of 400 in my opinion. Another thing I realized after shooting with this camera was that there were times when I got really crappy photos, especially it became really apparent with this camera in particular compared to the M35, but when you actually shoot this camera against the sun, the results is like really terrible. I mean, here are some photos, but the flaring, the glare, and the ghosting, and all those things that lots of photographers hate appear in this like camera. And I guess it might be due to the fact that this camera itself uses only one lens construction, meaning that basically the less lens there are in a camera, that means that it can't like fix the whole problems of like, you know, distortion, flares, and ghosting and stuff like that. The reason why expensive like lenses are really expensive is because that within that lens there's like multiple types of various types of like lens elements that have like different like diameters, different like sizes, and due to those what I call architectural people who came up with the exact formula of trying to like fix everything, you know, chromatic aberration, distortion, flares and stuff like that, and vignetting and stuff like that, those lenses get bigger and bigger while they produce better results. But this is going the other way around. Because there's only one lens, it can't fix any kind of problem that appear on a lens like construction. So there's lots of ghosting going on, ghosting, flares and stuff like going on. And you can see from the photos that this camera does really poorly in those types of scenarios. Or to prevent ghosting and flares with this camera, do not like shoot against the sun. So against the sun meaning that the sun is in front of you and you're basically pointing the camera like, I guess, vertically or up or down basically, but you'll get like similar results as the photos that I showed you. So in order to prevent that from happening, I would highly suggest shooting when the sun's sort of like in the 10 o'clock position, or maybe 9 o'clock position sideways, or maybe 2 o'clock position, or maybe 4 or 5 o'clock position. So basically the sun is behind you, but to the slightly to the right or slightly to the left, you will get the best results shooting with this camera. It is exactly similar to the Kodak M35. It is fully plastic and not super durable plastic, but sort of like a little bit on the flimsy side. So I wouldn't like do hardcore shoots with this camera. I mean, at the exact same price point, like $30-40 used in the used market, if I'm right, you could purchase a camera that has better optics, better like performance, better durability, if I'm right, if I'm right. In that price point, like $30-40, there's like a lot of point and shoots that you can basically which have like better like what I call functionalities. And because point and shoots typically have better what I call lens optically, they should have like lots of lenses within that, you know, camera. They should prevent some flares and glares going on if you shoot it against the sun. And I only shot with just one point and shoot, the DL200 or something like that, but it produces really nice results for the exact same price as this Ilford Sprite 35. So I mean, I wouldn't highly advise a lot of people to get this camera due to the fact that it's not worth it in my opinion. But for people who want to casually take a camera out, or if you're like someone who's frequently purchasing those disposable cameras, and have been thinking about the, you know, the cost of that going up, you know, because in Japan right now the disposable cameras, they typically go for like $12 if I'm right. So if you like use more than 3 or 4, that's equivalent to one of these. So might be better to invest in a point and shoot, or maybe something like this, instead of like purchasing a disposable camera. So I went off topic. But so like I said, like this is a this like Ilford Sprite 35 is an expensive camera, and honestly I guess it is, like I said in my M35 video, it's like someone who's, it's like aimed towards people who frequently shoot with a disposable camera and are thinking of upgrading that to like a camera that you don't have to throw away. I mean, that's great for the ecology, the economy, and you just basically have to like purchase the film, but it opens that sort of like new field because you can, there's like so many like film stocks to choose from, and depending on that film stock you'll get different results. There's like the Ultra Max, there's Color Plus, there's Kodak Gold, there's Portra series, and there's like a lot of like monochromes within that, you know, realm of film in terms of 35mm format. And depending on what type of photography you're going for, you can basically choose the adequate film stock. And at the same time though, $30-40 is expensive, and I highly don't recommend people to get this camera, but instead some kind of point and shoot. This is the, I made a video on it, the Fuji DL1000 actually, which I purchased for roughly $30-40 actually. And this one, typically a point and shoot has a zoom type of functionality, so it opens up a new field of photography because you can shoot wide open and you can also shoot telephotos, which basically takes better photos in my opinion. And like I said earlier, that a point and shoot typically has more lenses. This one only has one lens element, while a point and shoot has multiple lens elements, preventing flares and glares going on. So it's actually, in terms of like overall quality, in terms of what kind of like photos you're looking for, you will probably get better resolution and better like quality in terms of the image quality going on if you shoot with the exact same film stock in a sort of like a point and shoot than one of these sort of like reusable disposable disposable camera. That's our, doesn't make any sense, but like a reusable camera. So hope that made some kind of sense to you guys. So yeah, all in all, I think I covered the most important parts about this camera. I mean, honestly, it's like really simple to use. You just load in the film and you just like slide it over and just wind it onto the reel, and you just keep like rotating. I don't like the sound, but I mean rolling the film onto the other side, and then you just go to the area where it says like number 1 next to the shutter button, and then you're ready to shoot. It's like, it's exactly the same as a disposable camera, and I guess a lot of people might prefer this over sort of like a point and shoot, while some people will prefer a point and shoot over reusable disposable camera. I mean, there are no right or wrong answers. It depends on what kind of photography, what kind of style you like to like shoot with. So yeah, hope you guys like enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave it in the comment section below. I'm happy to reply. And yeah, I guess we will see you next time. Peace. And stay safe, guys.